Okay, so you know how it is, right? A new administration's got to get going, new people are coming in, and there's all these headlines about who's getting picked for what cabinet position.
Yeah,
But what you
yeah.
don't always see is kind of like the behind-the-scenes story of why some of these really key people end up taking way longer than anyone expected to get confirmed.
Right.
Like, what's the holdup?
Exactly.
And so that's what we're diving into today.
Ah,
We're going to look back at when Donald Trump was getting his cabinet together way back when.
oh, wow, yeah.
We've got this transcript from the Ring of Fire YouTube channel,
Okay.
which is really interesting because it kind of pulls back the curtain on some of these things that most people wouldn't really know about.
Right.
And so our mission today is to really understand what were the real reasons behind these delays and go deeper than, just the political back and forth that you see on the news all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what this transcript does really well is it highlights that while, we often look at confirmations and these delays as just a political battle, Republicans versus Democrats.
Right.
It can be a bit more nuanced than that. And you know what I think you'll find interesting is that in this case, it was a bit surprising.
Okay. I'm intrigued already.
Yeah, this transcript argues that it wasn't just external opposition that was causing these delays, but that there were some pretty unexpected factors coming from the incoming administration themselves.
Oh, wow. Okay. So like shooting themselves in the foot kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's get into this story the transcript talks about right off the bat. This big push from certain Republicans to get these nominees confirmed like super fast.
Yeah.
Like there's a real sense of urgency and it wasn't subtle.
No, it wasn't. There's this quote in here from Lindsey Graham.
Oh, yeah.
Where he's saying that the nation is at war, under attack, even under siege.
Wow.
So they're really painting a picture of a country that's facing this immediate crisis.
Yeah.
That needs action right now.
Makes sense.
And this urgency that they're talking about, it wasn't just some, general feeling of we need to get this done. It was specifically tied to this domestic terrorism act that happened on New Year's Eve.
Oh, right.
So that's what the transcript is saying, is that that event
Right.
was being used to really accelerate things.
Okay.
Like, we need these confirmations to happen now because look at what just happened.
Yeah. It's like a we need all hands on deck kind of situation.
Exactly.
Okay. So that makes sense on the surface. But here's where it gets really interesting because the transcript goes on to say that the biggest holdup, the thing that was actually slowing everything down wasn't the Democrats or, political opposition from the outside, but it was actually actions coming from Trump's own team.
Yeah, that's what's so surprising about this whole thing.
That's wild.
It wasn't that the Democrats were dragging their feet or that the Senate was just moving slowly.
Right.
It was that the incoming administration themselves were kind of creating their own obstacles.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what kind of obstacles are we talking about here?
Well, one of the main examples the transcript uses is this whole issue of FBI background checks.
Okay.
Apparently, Trump's team was initially hesitant to even involve the FBI at all.
Really?
It sounds strange, right?
Yeah. You think that would be like standard procedure?
You would think so, but the transcript says that the initial plan was for Trump's team to use their own firm to do these background checks.
So like an internal thing.
Yeah, like they wanted to control who was vetting these potential cabinet members.
Interesting.
But the thing is, for a lot of these positions, you need security clearances.
Right.
And for that, you absolutely need the FBI to be involved.
So they kind of had to go back to square one.
They did. And according to the source, that whole detour, that whole, trying to do it themselves and then realizing they needed the FBI anyway, that caused a delay of about a month.
A month.
Yeah, a month in a presidential transition.
Yeah, it's huge.
It is. It's a lot of time, and it really shows how these little procedural things, these things that don't always make the news, can have a massive impact on how quickly a new government can actually get to work.
It's like a domino effect.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got this FBI background check delay, and then the transcript goes on to talk about another issue, these ethics pledges.
Right.
And when you hear the word pledge, you might think, oh, it's just like a symbolic promise.
Yeah.
But it's actually a lot more serious than that, right?
It is. The source makes it very clear that these aren't just about good intentions. These are legally binding documents.
Okay.
And they often involve specific restrictions on what you can do after you leave office, like, lobbying and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's all about ensuring integrity and preventing conflicts of interest.
Makes sense.
And most importantly, they have to be signed before any of these other processes can move forward.
Oh, so like the background checks we were just talking about.
Exactly.
This is all connected.
It is. And the transcript says that Trump and his transition team also took their time signing these pledges.
Oh, wow. So it's like delay on top of delay.
Yeah, it created a real bottleneck because all these agencies, they couldn't do their due diligence until this basic paperwork was done.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And, this put the Republicans in a weird spot because they were the ones saying we need to get these confirmations done fast because of this national crisis.
Right. Remember, at war.
Exactly.
But then at the same time, the delays were being caused by, the people they were trying to get confirmed.
It's kind of ironic.
It is. So you've got this public push for speed, but behind the scenes, it's like a slow motion train wreck.
It makes you wonder, how much of this urgency was genuine and how much of it was for show.
Right, right.
And I think that's an important question for, our listeners to think about as well.
Yeah, definitely. So the transcript also gives a little glimpse into what the confirmation hearing schedule actually looked like at this point.
Yeah, and it wasn't pretty.
Not pretty. How so?
Well, according to the transcript, at the time of this recording, only one nominee had a hearing actually scheduled.
One.
Yeah, just Pete Heath.
Wow, so everyone else was just in limbo.
Pretty much. It shows you that things weren't exactly running smoothly.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the source's perspective on this whole thing changed a bit over time.
That's right. At first, it seems like there was this expectation or maybe hope that some of Trump's picks would face some serious opposition.
Okay.
That maybe some of them might even get blocked.
Right.
But that optimism, or maybe that was just wishful thinking,
Yeah.
it faded as things went on.
So what changed their mind?
Well, a couple things. One was just the numbers. The Republicans had a majority in the Senate.
Right.
So the Democrats didn't really have the power to block anyone.
Right.
And then the other thing was that New Year's Eve attack that we talked about that
Yeah.
really strengthened the Republicans' resolve.
Like a rallying effect.
Exactly. They were using it to say, look, we need to be united. We can't be fighting amongst ourselves when the country is under threat.
So basically they felt like they had a free pass.
In a way, yeah, the source is saying that this sense of crisis made it much harder for anyone to speak out against these nominees.
It's like they were afraid of being seen as unpatriotic or something.
Right.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure.
It is. And the transcript even names a few people like Pete Heath, again, Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, as examples of nominees that they thought would get confirmed no matter what.
So even if there were concerns about that.
Exactly. It shows you how much power that narrative of unity and urgency had.
Yeah. Okay, so we get to the end of the transcript, and it sounds like the outlook is pretty pessimistic.
It is. There's this feeling that, yeah, these people are going to get confirmed even though there are all these delays and even though there might be some real concerns about their qualifications.
It's like they're resigned to it.
Yeah, like they're expecting the worst but hoping for the best.
So the big takeaway here, I think, for you listening to this is that these delays that we see sometimes when a new president comes in, they're not always about political battles.
Right.
They can be about the incoming administration's own actions.
Yeah, like just basic things like getting the FBI to do background checks and, filling out paperwork on time.
It's like they're tripping over their own feet.
Exactly. And I think what this transcript shows is that those little things, those procedural things, they can be just as important as the big political fights when it comes to shaping a new administration.
And it really makes you think about, the trade-offs between speed and thoroughness.
Yeah. Like if you're rushing to get people in place, are you sacrificing the quality of the vetting process?
Exactly. And what kind of long-term consequences could that have?
That's something for all of us to consider because it could affect not just this particular administration, but how things are done in the future.
Yeah, that's a really good point to end on food for thought.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us today for this deep dive.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you next time.
See you then.
Bye.